Carius, and today I've got a neat little experiment for you. I wired up a Khaos and tried to see how far I could push the rate of fire. If you've seen MisterNathan's videos on his Khaos, you know that he replaced the pusher motor with a Rhino and then hooked it up to a PWM so that he could change the rate of fire. And when it's maxed out, the rate of fire is completely ridiculous. And so I was wondering what happens if I do the same thing but with an MTB Wolverine motor running on 3S as the pusher. And what I've got is something that is hilarious but completely impractical for several reasons. So, it's your standard 3S rewired Khaos, except it has been set up with a PWM, and here's the knob right here. You can see all the guts here. I actually followed MisterNathan's wiring diagram that he posted on his video, which I'll have a link to in the description. Of course, the battery's there. I've also got a little voltmeter with a switch. I did have a button on this, but some little kid ripped it off. Oh well. But I got my voltmeter, my fire rate adjustment, and when it's maxed out, it will empty an entire magazine of 45 rounds in less than 2 seconds. It's completely ridiculous. And normally that would be kind of fun, but that is well beyond what the stock motors on 3S can handle, and the FPS drops off violently when you max out the rate of fire. The first few shots will get standard ranges, and then it will just peter out like a dying water hose as you go through the magazine. Yeah. Also, for some reason, hooking up the same PWM that MisterNathan used to a Wolverine motor instead of a Rhino seems like there's something weird going on with the voltage, where on the PWM's dial, only from there to about there actually work. The entire rest of the PWM is not enough voltage to get the motor to even move. So it's basically off. For just an example. Okay, one of these magazines in here. So at the moment, if I were to try to fire it, nothing. The conveyor won't even move, even at over half of the dial's range. Nothing. If I go to about, I think the minimum, I get a little less than standard Khaos rate of fire. And then if I crank it up, it becomes ridiculous, and I'm not about to shoot my hand with that. So I only have from here to here to play with, but it does go from about 1 ball a second to over 20 balls per second. Which is way better in burst fire than it is in full auto, because you have no range. So let's show you some firing demos. I know you saw the little teaser in the last video, which was this thing firing the entire magazine, but what you didn't see was just how much the range suffers when you push the rate of fire of a Khaos that far. So before I show you the range drop off, I'll just give you a quick demonstration of the rate of fire when this dial is all the way maxed. That was 40 rounds, just gone. And you can kind of hear the motor struggling a little bit. The conveyor belt has a really interesting whine to it with that Wolverine motor, but it's pretty hilarious. Let's load another magazine. So I do actually have 6 of these. Another 40 rounds. One thing that's important to note is if you want to do something like this, definitely wire it for motor braking, or you're just wasting your time. You pull the trigger once, you're going to get half the magazine fly out, and you won't be able to control it. With motor braking, though, I can actually get a couple rounds at a time. at this rate of fire. So. So yeah, there's that ridiculous thing. Now let's show you the pitiful range drop-off that you experience when you try to do this to a Khaos. Alright, so let's get a range test of this thing. As you'll be able to see, when you just do burst fire or single shots, the range is fine. Like, those are ending up on top of the shed. But if you go full auto for an entire magazine, you'll be able to watch the rounds just lose range extremely quickly. And I was firing from the right to left. We end up with rival rounds, I think, starting about here, probably 30 feet from where I was standing, spreading all the way down to the fence and a little bit past the fence. And there's one or two out here. Yeah. So that's kind of a crazy difference in range. We're looking at probably approaching 100 feet for the longest shots and barely 30 feet at the bottom end of the clip. Same deal in the opposite direction. You can see there's this kind of empty area between the two groupings. So then here's where the left to right shots start. We've got a fairly large concentration. And it keeps going all the way out here. Another situation with the spread is like 60 feet long. Same firing towards the shed. Starts at like 40 feet from the porch, ends up all the way past the shed. I think the best motor you're going to want to put as the pusher on a Khaos is something that hits that 3S sweet spot normally, like a Rhino motor like MisterNathan did, or try a Neo Rhino, of course. That would be pretty cool. But something that is designed for that standard 35,000 RPM and has a decent amount of torque will probably get you the max rate of fire you can get out of a Khaos while still maintaining your FPS throughout the magazine. Here you can see me using a nut gatherer to pick up rifle rounds. I'm not sure who came up with the idea first. I saw somebody doing it at SC&C, then I saw Out of Darts video, and I knew I had to grab one. And it really does work fantastically. And not only does it save you from having to bend over and pick them up individually, it's just way faster and easier. And as you can see here, it allowed me to reach under the shed and over the fence and grab stuff. And it was just great. It does have a tendency to collect a little bit of leaves, but it's really not that big of a deal. It's worth it considering how much easier it is to pick up the rounds. I mean, you can see here, here's about half of what was in the yard. And yeah, sure, it has a few leaves in it, but not nearly as much as you'd expect for how many leaves are in the yard. And all you gotta do to empty this thing out is just spread two of the spines apart near the bottom and just dump it out. It works fantastically. I'll put a link in the description to Amazon where you can buy this exact one that I'm using. It really is fantastic, and kudos to whoever came up with it, and to Out of Darts, and to Jonathan of the SCNC for introducing it to me. Okay, so just for the hell of it, I'm going to do a miniature 400 round challenge. I've only got 6 Khaos mags, each of them filled with 45, and in case you didn't know, you can just add 5 more rounds to the top of a Khaos mag after you've filled up the 4 channels really easily, and the gun won't have any problems with it. So these are all 45 each, for a total of 270. So not quite 400, but enough to get a decent prolonged rate of fire number. So I'm going to fire all these. Oh, and another weird little tip, kind of a cheap and cheesy dart catcher. It's just a wadded up blanket. It'll absorb all the impact and usually keep most of your ammo kind of just inside this mass. So if you don't have any decent dart catcher setup and you don't want rifle balls to go everywhere, that's a good way to do it. Of course, it'll probably prove me wrong now that I've said that. Okay, so 270 rounds in who knows how long. Let's see what happens. Just get situated, make sure I can do this quickly. Alright. That works pretty good considering that's almost 300 rounds into the blanket. You can tell most of them are just kind of sitting right here. I've got a couple that bounced out because they were just hitting other rival balls. But compared to what that could have been, with just stuff all over my room, that's pretty decent. And I'll edit into the video what the actual rate of fire was there over that time frame. Oh, another quick thing to note, the reason I'm doing this with a Khaos and not a Nemesis is obviously because this is spring-loaded as opposed to gravity-fed. The Khaos has a much higher rate of fire ceiling than the Nemesis, just because the balls are being forced into the conveyor belt. I doubt a Nemesis would keep up with the rate of fire that's you can get out of this Wolverine pusher at all. It would probably not even increase the rate of fire over your standard 3S Nemesis that much. I'd probably have similar results with the Discord because it's gravity fed. Even though it is a little smoother feeding than a Nemesis, just because it's just channeled straight gravity fed down into the conveyor belt, it still probably wouldn't keep up with the conveyor at this kind of speed. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this look at just kind of a weird experiment of mine. I will see you in the next video, and until then, this has been Carius, reminding you to have fun. Now, if I wasn't recording that, I will be pissed. No, I was recording good.